It's noon, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon and welcome to Speaking of Gas, a weekly look at what matters to you, the owner of oil and gas rights in Pennsylvania. This webcast is recorded. The first week is available on YouTube at this time, and this broadcast, as well as last week's, will also be available as soon as I put those up. In order to get an invitation to the live broadcast, if you're listening to this now on YouTube, is that you need to subscribe through www.GasWellGuru.com, and then you'll get a weekly reminder of the webcast and links to other information as well. So this week, I'm going to talk about a random thing that came up. You are aware that I'm the membership director, or may not be aware, of the Pennsylvania Oil and Gas Landowner Alliance. And I interact with our membership. You know, we're a group of people who own oil and gas rights throughout the state. We advocate on behalf of mineral owners and also provide education. This particular event is mine, R&R Energy Consulting, but it pretty much falls in line with all the mission and goals of what POGLA offers. So this week, a POGLA member called, and actually with an issue with getting logged in, we straightened that out, and then they said, you know, I can hear a well being drilled. Sometimes we can see the rig. Sometimes I can even hear them talking. But how do I find out exactly where that rig is and find out any information? You know, one of the questions that people always have when there's a rig being drilled anywhere near where their property is, am I going to be part of the unit? So how can I make assumptions about that? How do I get more information? So I started with how can you locate that well? And that's a pretty quick process. And I took her to our website, the POGLA website, and that you see now on the screen. And this is our members only page. And this is a library, the Oil and Gas Landowner Library. One of our members of the board, compiled the information. We do respond if anyone tells us there's links broken. We check this occasionally. The links we used yesterday did work, which is encouraging. But mostly we're a volunteer organization, so we do depend on that volunteer support. So this has been set up for some time to just provide a quick go-to for members when we tell them that something's available, that they can find some links. So I instructed her to go to the Mapping, Permitting, and Reporting tab down here, and there's a quick link right there. Oil and gas mapping. And then if you just click on that link, it's going to bring up a map of Pennsylvania. And this is automatically set to show unconventional wells that are permitted and active in Pennsylvania. So you can see, if you're familiar at all with the shale drilling, these are the counties where they're active. There are other wells. There are other tabs that you can push, like, for instance, if you wanted to also look at conventional wells and make that selection, submit a request, the blue dots that you will see come up. And this is provided my internet continues to function quickly. Those blue dots represent those conventional wells. And then if you want to also include wells that have been plugged and abandoned or temporarily shut in, you can select more status and pull up some more dots that will represent other types of wells. So I'm going to go back to just the conventional. And this is not intended to be a how-to necessarily, because it's going to be pretty quick. But rather, what I went through for this particular member and how we arrived at the information. Okay, I'm going to refresh that map and just get back to the beginning. Actually, I'll stop sharing. I'll go to the next tab here, and I have the map we actually used. And this is a blown up version of that map. So it pretty easily, you can scroll in and out and show wells in a particular location. We are in, for this, we're in Bradford County, and we're in Monroe Township on the edge of Albany Township. I think I got that right, yes. And this is the particular well. So she told me where she was located. I pulled up this map, and we determined that from the area she was in and the roads that we could define in here, that this was the area that the well was in. So then if you go over here on the screen to this little sidebar on the map, there's an eye, and it's the identify screen. And if you click on that and highlight it, then when you click on one of these red dots, you're going to pull up the information for that well pad, so you can identify what that well is. And it's thinking. We're part of the new broadband project here in Tioga County that the Tri-County Rural Electric is putting in. Hopefully we'll have lightning fast speeds. Okay, sometimes you have to zoom in a little further to get it to actually come up. So let's be patient. There we go. Okay, so a little information box comes up, and it's got a lot in it. Right across the top, it says unconventional oil and gas wells, 1 of 4. So this immediately tells you that there are 4 wells that are in some state of being permitted on this pad. This one is the Indian Foot 102HC, and you're going to get information for individual wells as you click through these little arrows. So there's the second one, 101HC, the third, 103, and the fourth one, 104. And it's not going to give you necessarily pad information, but individual well information. So this tells me the permit number, that if you scroll down a little bit, the permit was issued in August, so it's pretty new well. And you know, I said that's very likely, because she said they're drilling now. And so this also shows that the well was spud on August 14th. So that means that they broke ground on one or all, and in this case, all of the wells, on the 14th of August, and that they are currently doing some kind of operations. Now, I don't know if there's a drilling rig up or drilling's completed, or whether they're have drilled the horizontals, whether they might be perforating or fracking. We don't know the answer to that. You'd have to get a little closer to view that to know. Also, if a well's been plugged, you'll find a date. Is this a conservation well, a well permitted below the Onondaga horizon? The answer to that is no. It's in Bradford County, Monroe Township, latitude, longitude. And then if you keep going down, here is the area where you can find more specific information. So, you know, this person said that they are very close to this well. Now, what does close mean? If they lived, and they actually said they lived along 220, there are some tools here to use, and one of them is under tasks, there's a measurement tool. So that's something I like to do right away. If I know where their property is located, I can get a sense of how close they really are. And so if you pull up the ruler, I say that I want it in feet, and then I click on the well pad and then draw a line to say their house is here. And then if you look over, here where the measurement is, you'll see that it says they're 6,102 feet, a little over a mile from the actual well pad. So, they say, am I going to be in that unit? That's a pretty good distance to be as a radius from a well pad. So it just depends on how big a project they are drilling from this pad. I would always tell them that, with an unconventional shale well, those laterals are typically going to go northwest, southeast, and in all pretty much in that trajectory, there can be differences. And usually you'll see wells in both directions. An interesting note here is there's state game lands here, state game lands number 036. And it does look like they may be accessing, the pad looks to be on private property, but it does appear they're going to access possibly a significant amount of game lands from those private lands. And one thing that's happened, whether those game lands were previously leased or not, if there's no lease on those, but if they only need a subsurface lease to develop it, that's a shorter, less complicated process than going through a bid process that they would have to if there was going to be a surface lease. And that's a topic for another day. But I helped her locate where the well was, what it was, and then now this connection today, and I'm going to end that measurement. This connection today is not super speedy, so it's not going to pull up some of the other information we'd be looking for. Because I'm going to tell you that pulling up that little box with the information should be much quicker than that. But the other thing that you can access is in those, as you scroll down in that, through that information box, you'll see a place to locate authorization documents. And on these newer wells, you can actually pull up well location plats from here. You can pull up the information that's going to show you where the permitted laterals go. And that's going to give you the information to know, am I possibly going to be in the unit for these or not? So, if you were in this particular area, all this looks like a lot of wilderness. If you were in this area, very possibly, if the laterals go that way, you could expect laterals possibly to go out to the side and down, but whether they'd get over that far, that might be quite a stretch. Okay. So we answered her question about where the wells are that she's hearing at this point. We don't know at this point what stage they're in. But another question that typically comes on the heels of how do I know where they're drilling is, how do I know that's where they are? Are they really where they say they are? How do I know if they're extracting the gas from my property? So I'm going to go through what's called some completion reports today. I pulled up 3 of them. And the three are different companies to kind of give you a sense of different information that's provided in different formats. Okay. So first of all, well, I think I'll start with the very simplest one first. And that is one. And interestingly, as I'm looking for these, I find one. The name of the company is Lola Energy. They're drilling in Butler County, Pennsylvania. Lola Energy, Petroco, LLC, doing business as Snyder Brothers Incorporated. Snyder Brothers is a very familiar name in the state, and they have a lot of operations out in Western PA. There's other information, like, for instance, Baker Hughes. They're a completion company. Other names you see there as Schlumberger. I always laugh when I see that name. I think back to all the years of chasing wireline rigs around to see where they're going and chasing that Schlumberger truck. So Baker Hughes, Schlumberger, Halliburton, those are company names that you'll see on these reports. This is, let me see what they titled this report. This is called a well record. And this has a well record, has a lot of information about when the well was drilled, what depths they actually achieved, how the well was cased. There, we talked last week about these logs. This is a log of the formations that they arrive at from their drill cuttings as they're drilling. And, you know, there's some familiar formations. Western PA, we're seeing the Geneseo Burkett. Remember, if you might not have seen last week's yet, but that is a formation that's in production in the state of shale that's above the Marcellus. You see all this operation is Marcellus and above. The Marcellus is at 5,316 feet, and the Burkett is between 5,107 and 5,131. And you'll find various information here. Precision drilling, drilled the lateral. There's a lot of companies that have to sign off in this process as we go. And that circles around to the question of, how do I know that they're where they say they are? Well, trespass not being where they say they are is huge in this business. And I want to say that that's something that they really go out of their way to avoid, because if they're found guilty of trespass, that's one thing that has some big penalties with it if they're sued for it and the owner of the oil and gas rights is successful. So a directional driller has to sign off on these. This is the equivalent, you know, of an engineer signing off on engineering reports, a surveyor signing off on a survey, people with all various levels of expertise that are involved in the process and have to show some verification for what they're saying. So this is a very simple one. You'll see in a minute. This shows the side view of how that well was drilled. They started at the surface. They came down straight pretty much till they began the curve. And then it shows they actually curved back. And then the kickoff point for the curve was at 4,679 feet. And the landing point, that's an important one, is where they encounter the formation and that was at 5,753 feet. And the interesting thing here is that's why you see them curve back on a lot of these, is their landing point is actually right under the vertical. So they're not stranding gas. So they had come straight down, made the curve, and landed out here, they would have been stranding some gas in here. But what you're going to typically see now is that they're going to drill a lateral from the landing point to the bottom hole. And then there's going to be a project of perforating and fracking along that wellbore. And this shows where they are. And then this shows it from like an overview of the bottom or the surface location. They drilled back, started their curve, landed in the formation, and drilled to here. Okay, so that's a simple one. Got lots of information about, this is how they know exactly where they are. And the well path report is very lengthy when there's a horizontal drill. So hopefully this doesn't seem too random today. I'm going to throw a note in here. I just had hip replacement surgery a few days ago, and I want to say I'm doing this still a little bit medicated, so sometimes I lose my train of thought a little bit, but I think I'm going to tie it all together in a way that will be coherent in the end. Okay, so the next one I go to, and I'm going to do this in order of complexity, I mean, what you're going to look at. And it's this bear claw pad. Okay, this is a Repsol well. And you're going to see that, there's lots in this that looks different. A lot of this form is still the same. There's the formations, a little simpler, less of them noted. Doesn't mean that there aren't lots of them in there. This one is in Lycoming County, McIntyre Township. And you'll notice that we're seeing Marcellus, Cherry Valley, and Lower Marcellus. So what we've actually got is upper, middle, and lower. Now, let's see, the thickness here, we've got about 70 feet Marcellus in this one. Actually, the Cherry Valley shows no depth, it's just denoted. And the Lower Marcellus, that really doesn't show any additional footage either. So whether that's exactly accurate, I don't know. There are places where the Marcellus is thick enough that they are actually drilling what's called a stacked play and drilling in each of those formations. Okay, trying not to go down a rat hole here. So this survey completion report is actually, this one has Pro-Directional on it. That's the other company that's showing, in addition to Repsol. So here's a little more complicated completion report that shows the side view. Now remember that there's one of these for each individual well. So this is showing the side view of just one of them. And this one is only referring to the 14H. And it shows that they come down. And actually, this is not a flat trajectory. They're actually going deeper as they go to stay in the formation. And they're showing three different targets. They're actually making a change in that depth at each one of these locations here. I'll blow this up a little bit. And sometimes I'm finding, in this case, there's 4 of them. Sometimes it has to do with these cross unit laterals. I don't know at this point if that's the case. It does look like there's a change in the depth that they're drilling in each case. So this one goes down and actually up a little at the end. Okay, and then here's the aerial view of those laterals. And in this case, you see the target one that this one is referring to, which is one of three of the longer ones. And this shows 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 laterals to the southeast. And so if your property was somewhere within this area, you would expect to be part of the production of those wells. And then the last one that I'm going to talk about was the most complicated one, and I meant to talk about this one now for a couple of weeks, because I think around the 1st of October, I stumbled on this one by accident, which is how I stumble on a lot of things here. And this is the L well. And the operator is Chesapeake. And so does that surprise you that we come up with the most complicated completion report this week? And it's from Chesapeake. As I say the name Chesapeake, I guess I should also mention that it was in the news today, that it was, don't want to name the sources because it's confidential, blah, 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 but they're looking at the possibility of buying the assets of Southwestern Energy. So we'll be watching that. It's confidential, but all over the news. So this L well, that's a tongue mouthful, is in Bradford County, Wilmot Township in the Jenningsville Quad. And this one was actually spud in June of this year, and it was completed in August. The vertical depth of 7,684 feet. Here's their log report. Looks a little different. It's been presented in a chart form, and it shows the Tully, the Hamilton, the Marcellus, the heel of the well and the toe of the well and the location. Those are not formations. And the total vertical depth of 8,130 feet. That's the total depth that they reached. And I think another thing to notice that you'll see in these reports sometimes, it'll show levels where there were gas shows. Interestingly, they don't list gas shows in the Marcellus. So are these always actually accurate to what they saw down there? Yes and no. Okay, here is that same report we looked at with the other wells, and notice we're getting more and more complicated, more and more information. And I'm going to blow this up so you can see. I cannot tell you exactly what all these little ovals mean. I made some guesses that they have to do with some data points, but I'm not exactly sure what they are. Initially, I thought maybe they were perforation points, but in areas where such as this, where they have not yet reached the landing point, you're doing the curve. They don't perforate the well there. They only perforate and frack the well along the lateral after they've hit the landing point. So what is important to note here And Chesapeake was the first one that came around with those documents that was asking you to make your unit size bigger, allow you to drill cross unit laterals. And then we ended up with a state law that said that they can drill cross unit laterals and that they can allocate the production as they reasonably see fit, something like that. So what we can see here is that there's designations, and they actually label it as such, where that lateral crosses a unit line. So this is a unit declaration or designation. Remember that the state has nothing to do with units, but they are making that designation on this location plat. And then that should match up with your unit declaration that's filed in the courthouse. So this was kind of an interesting look at some laterals that start here at the pad, drill, let's see, and I'll just pick this one right here. They're going to drill out, they're going to encounter the formation, and then they're going to frack that formation along the wellbore. And according to the law, it's very vague in there, but if they perforated that wellbore along here and fracked it, then they've got to allocate those royalties along there. If they had a section of wellbore, and I don't see a real short section in here, but if they had a short section where they said, oh, we got a fault in here and we're not going to frack the well from this point to this point, then they would not have to allocate any production along that area. So for those of you that are that deeply into it, that you've actually looked at the idea of cross unit laterals and how do they know where they are, what is this going to look like to me, what is this going to mean? Here's kind of an example of it. Okay, so hopefully I tied that together in a meaningful way. You know, we had the members that call in, and you know, that's a pretty frequent question. I know there's a well that's being planned near me. How am I going to know if I'm in the unit? I know they're drilling a well. Where is it? Where do the laterals go? There are ways to find that information out, and a lot of actually free information available if you know how to use it to get that. In my business, on our energy consulting, I do actually do a lot of reports for landowners that want to know the answer to that question and don't want to have to figure it out themselves. And I put together detailed reports of well activity in proximity to their oil and gas rights in a form that they can understand, and then also go over it with them in layman's terms via a meeting like this so that they can see how it may or may not affect them. I am going to take a look at the question and answer box. At this point, I don't see any. We haven't had any of that kind of interaction yet. Maybe we will in the future. I want to thank you for participating today. As long as the recording goes okay and I get it edited and up on YouTube, you'll be able to view it there. Also, watch my website because and your emails, because I will be producing some paid webinars that will be designed as how-tos. I've done them in the past. How-to webinars, for instance, how to navigate the DEP website and locate the information about a specific well. And these will be in a form that you'll be able to arrive at answers to questions you have about your own property. If you're a subscriber to Speaking of Gas, and if you go to www.GasWellGuru, GasWellGuru.com and go to free webinars. It's easy to subscribe. Then you'll get a welcome email with a link. You'll get a reminder every Wednesday morning with the link. And then you'll be able to see what else I have available there. And you'll get an email from me as I put those out. So once again, thank you for joining. I don't see any questions. So with that, I'm going to end today's webcast, and thanks for tuning in.